So what are we going to do today? Today is the info session on Code in Place, and I'm going to try and answer 3 questions for you. The first question is, what is Code in Place? I'd like to tell you why I think it's so special and so unique. And then I would like to encourage you guys to both apply. We would love to teach with you, or if you want to be a teacher, or to teach you if you want to be a student. And then we'd also love you to share it with your loved ones so that more people know about this wonderful thing that Stanford does for free. I'm going to tell you all about Code in Place, but I feel like I should tell you who I am first. So nice to meet you. My name's Chris. I'm a professor in the computer science department. I've actually been a professor for about 8 years now. And at Stanford, I teach several courses. Most of them are the intro to computer science classes. I'm also an AI specialist, so I teach the mathematical foundations for AI courses. And in addition to teaching, I'm a researcher. So I do research in artificial intelligence, but I'm also always doing research on how to make education more joyful and scale better. Something you might not know about me. So I now am a professor at Stanford, but I didn't grow up in the United States. I was in fact born in East Africa, in Nairobi. I lived there till I was 12, and then I moved all the way to Malaysia, where I stayed until I was 18. The reason why, my parents were teachers, and there's schools around the world. And I really benefited so much from seeing the many corners of this beautiful planet that we live on. I suppose it's one of the things that makes Code in Place so special to me, that we have this class that has students from all over the world, 150 countries. Maybe that has a little bit to do with where I came from myself. I am one of 2 professors who teaches Code in Place. And I'd like to briefly introduce my co-instructor, Mehran Sahami. Mehran Sahami is one of the most famous and popular professors at Stanford. Here he is in his professional shot, and here he is on the other side with his lightsaber, because why not teach with a lightsaber? He's very loved at Stanford, where he teaches a lot of the 106A classes. Before Stanford, he was at Google when it was just a startup. But maybe like myself, we both found a deep love of teaching, which brought us to becoming professors. So at this point, about your instructors, I would love for you guys to gather around and we can tell you just a little bit of the story of what Code in Place is. The story of Code in Place really starts with what is CS106A. So at Stanford University, one of our most popular courses is an Intro to Programming course. It's the course that you would take if you wanted to be a computer science major. It's also the course you would take if you wanted to not major in computer science, but you wanted to know how to program. It fits both of those needs. And we put so much love into this course. In fact, this course has decades of love put into it. People have been refining the curriculum, making it better and better and better to serve both those needs. It teaches programming. It teaches people how to program in this language we'll tell you more about called Python. And it's one of the reasons that I love teaching, because I love to teach this particular material. Code in Place is this material, but made free for the world. So it's 106A as community service. On a light aside for why we do this, it does cost us money, but it brings us so much joy. It is so fun to get to teach people from all over the world that we want to make it free for everybody. So we're going to try and bring the best parts of the best class at Stanford to you for free starting this spring. Well, spring if you're in the Northern Hemisphere. 106A teaches you how to program. When you walk out of the class, we want you to have a new skill. And that new skill is that ability to turn your dreams of what you want your computer to be able to do into reality. You'll be able to program things like what I'm showing you on the slide, where you can write an interactive breakout game. By the end of class, if you want to do something like data science, you should you should be able to work with the lists and dictionaries, those underlying computer science principles that you would need in order to do this. And in a little bit more detail, we have a 6-week curriculum. And here's how we're going to get you from no code to that wonderful end product where you can turn dreams into reality. It starts with learning how computers think, learning the step-by-step understanding that computers have when they're trying to execute a thing called a program. We do this through this very lovable character called Carol, invented at Stanford in the 80s, and it's been used by Stanford students to introduce them to programming since then. So we'll introduce you in the exact same way. You'll build this really core foundation of how computers work through Carol. And then once you know that, it's time to introduce you to full-scale Python programming. You'll start by writing simple programs. Those will build up to be more and more complicated. Sometime around week 3 or week 4, you'll be able to program something like Console Academy, which will quiz your friends or your loved ones on math problems that they could solve, and your program will give them feedback. This is such a special place in your learning journey. Once you've learned this foundations, you get to have this Cambrian explosion of things you can make. And we're going to celebrate in the next 2 weeks by teaching you graphics so that you can make interactive games, so that you can make things like little animations or movies. And then we're going to teach you lists and dictionaries so you can do things like data science. That's really just the start. My dream for Code in Place is that you come in with no programming experience, and then 6 weeks later, you can start to make things just of your own imagination. And to celebrate that passage moment, the last experience in Code in Place is that we're going to have you all make your own individual projects. You'll make something of your own imagination, and you'll have this huge community support you on that mission. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go from no coding to the place where you can start to make things that you are dreaming of. And we're going to teach you the fundamentals. Like CS 106A is the class I would teach you if you were then going to spend the rest of your life studying computer science. If you're going to then get a master's degree, a PhD, this is how it would start. It's also the class I'd teach you if you just wanted to do 6 weeks and get to the point where you could apply it to the other things you love in life. So come on, it'll be a good time. Now, at this point, a lot of you are probably wondering, do I have the necessary prerequisites for Code in Place? And I think the answer is likely yes, because this course was designed with the idea that the only prerequisite would be that you would know how to turn on your computer. We're going to take it from there. If you can find the Code in Place website, then we're going to get you from no programming experience all the way to the place where you have the core fundamentals. So here's your prerequisite test. You can answer this in your head. Is this computer on or not? And hopefully you said yes. Okay, you ready for another one? Is this computer on and off? On or off? You might have said off, but this is a tricky one. It might be on and you just have to move the mouse. Anyways, I'm just having some fun. But the point being, this is really a class for beginners. It's a class where you have no programming experience. Now, there's some people who have had small amounts of programming experience that have had a wonderful time in Code in Place, really adding to their understanding. So even though the class was designed for beginners, if you feel like you have a little bit of coding experience, this is a wonderful place for you too. Maybe you've done like the equivalent of the first few weeks, but you'd like to make sure that you haven't missed any holes in your knowledge. Now, if you have a lot of programming experience, let's say like you're a professional programmer, there's this other way you can get involved in Code in Place. At that point, we probably don't have too much to teach you, but you probably have a lot to teach other people. We'll talk about this in a moment, but if you have a ton of code experience, we might invite you to come participate in the teaching of this class. So far I've told you about the high-level perspective of CS 106A, but what I haven't told you about is the magic. Why is 106A one of the most loved classes at Stanford, and why is Code in Place exactly the class that I always dreamed of making? Well, it really comes down to the secret sauce. And what is the secret sauce? The secret sauce at Stanford, I'm going to leave a little suspense, is that it is filled with incredibly talented teachers. So if you come to take the class at Stanford, 1 in every 10 people in our community is going to be a teacher, and once a week you'll meet in a small group with 10 other students and a section leader. A section leader is somebody who is farther along in their programming journey and wants to take time out of their lives to help you learn your basics. It is one of the real pieces of magic to Code in Place and CS 106A. And it's for lots of reasons. Having a class filled with teachers creates this beautiful ecosystem. It also gives you time to have in-person conversations, and that cadence just seems to do such beautiful things. For those of you guys who are interested in joining as teachers, I'll also lightly note that being a teacher can be one of the great things for your career. If you're building up to the point where you've really finished learning and you want to transition into becoming a professional, having a moment to turn around and teach the basics is such a great thing to add to your journey. So it's a huge win-win. These teachers have a great experience, and it really leads to the class that we want for students. We could have always made a class where we just put the material online, and we've done that, and some people have made it through. But once we added this secret ingredient, we saw a lot, about 70% of students being able to make through this core material. So anyways, we're really excited about this so special part of Code in Place. Code in Place is special for lots of reasons. One is that we have teachers, one for every 10 students. And another thing that's special about it is we're going to bring people from all around the world. If we have enough teachers, we can support, 10,000, 20,000 students. In the past, we've taught people from over 150 countries, spanning all time zones, all genders, all ages. I like to say this, but the youngest students we have are 16 for legal reasons, but the oldest student we've had was 89 years old. So, I feel like wherever you are on that spectrum, this is a great place for you. Okay. I think this is worth noting that there's a deep philosophy behind Code in Place. There's a reason why we do this. I have this belief in the world that we really can scale up high quality education. Like, you can take a class like Stanford that's had millions of dollars poured into it and resources and thoughtful, loving people, and you can give that to the world. But if you really want to scale up high quality education, you can find that ability to scale through this idea of section leaders. These people who would love to spend some time explaining the concepts to a beginner are everywhere. And I think as a community, as a society, we underestimate how much joy one gets from teaching. When we started the Code in Place experiment, we were blown away by how many people really wanted to volunteer their times to help their fellow learners out there. Okay. This is perhaps not that important, but by the numbers, we've gotten more than 10 times the retention rates of online courses. Our teachers have been completing at an exceptional rate. They seem so motivated. At the end of the class, we ask students, would you recommend this to a friend on a scale of 1 to 10? 1 being no, 10 being like, yeah, I would definitely recommend it to a friend. And we've been getting an average recommender strength of 9.7. Especially for people who come as teachers, a lot of people have used Code in Place to continue their professional journey. And, at this point, we've had about 1,000 teachers each iteration. This will be our 5th. We'll hopefully hit 5,000 teachers. And no one has corrected me on this, but we might be the computer science class in the world with the most teachers ever, which is something I'm very proud of. Okay. So at this point, I've told you a little about the curriculum of Code in Place, and I've told you about the special sauce. I'd love to tell you a little bit about how we got to this place where Stanford wanted to give away this high quality education for free. And it really started during the pandemic. There was this moment during the pandemic when the world had to shut down. And I was about to teach 106A, this flagship computer science course of Stanford. And I called up Mehran, who was going to be my co-instructor. I called up Juliet and Ali, some wonderful people I've gotten to teach with. And we had a conversation. We said, this is a difficult time for the world. What can we do to be helpful? And Mehran said, well, if we're doctors, we could go, help them that way. But obviously, we're not qualified for that. And so we decided that we would find a way to bring 106A to the world. At first, our intention was just to bring the material. We would just give our assignments and our lessons. But then through conversation, we realized we thought we could give more. We could actually give the secret part of 106A, which was the section leader experiment. We were nervous the first time. We didn't know if it would work. We didn't know if people wanted to teach. And it was perhaps the most fun I've ever had. It's just teaching this course was such a joy. It was so heartwarming to see this level of generosity across the globe. It was so meaningful to me as a teacher to see so many people engaging in broadening their minds. After that, we fell in love with teaching this. There was a very generous donor who was participating in the first Code in Place, who then turned around and said, I'd like to keep this free for everybody. What would it take? And thanks to that generous donor, that's the reason that this is free. If you come to Stanford, the CS 106A class is very much not free. It costs like $5,000, but we can give this to you guys for free. And I feel so lucky that Stanford supports me in this. I feel so lucky that there's people like our donor. And I feel so lucky that there's learners like you guys, because at the end of the day, you will be doing the real hard work. Learning is going to be a big undertaking for you, certainly one that I think is worth it. Okay. Now, we're going to be taking Q&A questions in a moment, but I have a couple that I imagine a few of you guys are wondering. One of the things you might be wondering is, what is Python and why are you teaching it? When you have to program a computer, if you want to communicate tasks to a computer, you have to speak a computer programming language. There are many, just like there's many spoken human languages. There's Python, there's C++, there's Java, there's JavaScript. They're very similar, actually, but certainly Python has emerged as the most popular. So it's the most popular for data scientists. It's the most popular for people who do artificial intelligence. I used to work at Pixar. When I was at Pixar, we would use Python for most of our animations. It is, the language that many people use in most programming tasks. So on some level, if you come to Code in Place, and if you learn, you'll be learning the core, most popular programming language. There is another reason, and that other reason is it's also the best one for teaching people the core foundations and principles. So we're going to be teaching you programming. You'll be programming a particular language called Python, which we just think is the best. This is not that important, but in case you're curious, the name Python doesn't actually come from the snake. Its inventor was this person called Guido, and he named it after Monty Python's Flying Circus. But that's not important right now. What's important right now is your personal coding journeys. Now, there's a lot of programs that you may one day write. And one of the reasons of taking a class like CS 106A or Code in Place is to give you the foundations so you could get there. So, you could start with Code in Place, and then one day you could be at the place where you're making movies. If you think of like Disney animation or Pixar animation, or these other animation-based movie companies, behind the scenes, most of their employees are programmers who are thinking about how they can animate light, how they can move objects around the scenes. They build the infrastructure for doing the animation. So there's actually a Stanford professor recently who was one of the founding employees at Pixar who won the Turing Award a few years ago for his contributions to making movies. Some of you guys might not make movies. Maybe you're more interested in making consumer applications. And so this story that I have in front of you is a story of a fellow called Bright Simmons. And he made a program so that you can make sure that a drug you buy at a kiosk is not counterfeit medication. And so maybe what you'd like to do is make a program that can run on somebody's phone. Maybe you're curious about improving healthcare. There's arguments to say that we wouldn't have had the response we had to vaccine development in COVID-19 had smart people not been able to program different simulations. There's things like robotic surgeries coming. Maybe you care about improving healthcare and you want to intersect that with programming. I will lightly say, no matter what you're interested in, there's often a way where you can combine that love with the love of programming. There's even students of mine who've gone on to work on self-driving cars. And so that's all these wonderful places you could get to. Code in Place is supposed to give you the foundation so that you can get there. So we're going to teach you that core nugget of knowledge that is the basis for all the know-how you would need to then take steps into all these wonderful directions. I'm going to tell you a couple course values, and then it seems like you probably have lots of questions that you want answered. A couple course values. At Stanford, we really believe not just in writing programs that work. We really believe in writing beautiful programs. We want to teach you the way of thinking like a programmer so that you don't just write a program that solves the tasks we give you in Code in Place, but you have the fundamental designs so that you can build bigger and bigger programs. We call this the art of computer science. And so we're going to try and teach you not just how to make a program work, but how to make a beautiful program that will stand the test of time. We believe a lot in learn by doing. When you take this class, the most of your time will be spent programming, which makes sense. We'll have a whole bunch of different activities for you guys to program. Your weekly cadence, you'll come to Code in Place, and we'll give you a few lessons, lots of examples, and then we'll give you a series of programs for you guys to program that week. In addition, you will have a 1 hour time of your choosing where you'll meet with 10 other students and a section leader to go over it. There's a huge community. So at any point in time, there's about 700 Code in Placers online learning, and you can ask them questions as you're going through your coding journey. But that's what a week looks like in Code in Place. This is probably unsurprising to you, but we take great joy in having very hard material and getting as many people through it as possible. I've seen so many people learn to program at this point that I know every single one of you can do it. If you have the time, and by the way, the time that we expect you to spend is about 7 hours a week. If you can find 7 hours a week, every single one of you guys can accomplish this. Don't worry about your background. I know, I've seen it. I've seen people from every possible walk of life come learn to code. We believe you can do this. And then, this is a small thing, but it has become a big part of Code in Place. It was a course that started through people just wanting to donate their time. And then it grew into the class with the most teachers because thousands of people want to donate their time. And the teachers were appreciative of the students. So it has become a course that is centered around gratitude. We're so thankful to the students, and the students are thankful to the teachers. It's been a great thing. And, this came with this idea that I think all of you guys concede, but all of you guys are welcome. We're trying to figure out how to take the highest quality education and scale it. So please do come and learn. No matter where you're from, no matter what age, don't think you're too old, too young, from the wrong country. All of you guys are welcome. All of you guys can succeed. And I deeply in my heart believe all of you will benefit from the joy of learning to program. Okay, which brings me to the next question. You might be wondering, why should I study what we at Stanford call computer science, but you might call programming? There's so many answers. One of them is just, when I was a kid, I used to make sandcastles. I used to love to make sandcastles. And in fact, now I have a child and I get to make sandcastles again. And I thought to myself at some point, I wonder if I could become a professional sandcastle maker. And it turns out that wasn't the lucrative career option. But then in programming, I found really that. With my ability to program, I'm at this wonderful place where I go from my imagination to making something on screen. And it really hits that same love that I get when I make something like a sandcastle. I've personally loved programming because of how interdisciplinary it is. That just means that when I cared about making beautiful movies, there was a place where I could use my programming skills. When I cared about artificial intelligence, there was a place for my programming skills. There was a moment when I got really into archaeology and history, and I had a wonderful time thinking about those problems with my programming skills. It's just been a knowledge set that has helped me in all my other facets of life. I like to tell this story to my students, but there's a lot of studies that show if you learn computer science, you start to do better in your other courses, like you start to do better at English, in your language courses. And a lot of people have hypotheses as to why. Certainly, maybe programming, improves your mind and you get to think more deeply. I think it helps you have new angles on perspectives in the world. And so not only is it interdisciplinary, you can directly apply programming to math and language, but also I just feel like the problem solving you get is helpful. Wouldn't it be great if we could all do magic? That would just be fantastic. And I suppose maybe magic does exist in the world. I feel like programming can sometimes be the closest thing to magic. You can make things, and when people look at it, they might go, wow, how do you do that? And I've seen this through many times in my career. And, you having that feeling that you can create out of nothingness some deliverable that someone else might think of as looking a bit magical, that's a great sensation, and I want that for all of you guys. And I did mention this, but it pushes all of our minds. It helps us become smarter. Even if you're not intending to become a programmer, it's possible that learning to program will give you a way of thinking that you can then apply to other parts of your life. You might like Sudoku puzzles, but the ultimate Sudoku puzzles might be programming. I've encountered more and more interesting puzzles in my life as a programmer than anywhere else. And then I will say that it's a fascinating time. What an incredible moment. You can think about in human history, how fascinating would it be to be studying math in the time of the Sumerians when people were breaking ground on all sorts of new problems. And similarly, this is the era of computer science. I feel like in 1,000 years, people will look back at this moment and they'll be amazed by all the advances people were making in programming and what was possible with programming. One example is Self-driving cars, one of those things I said that this would be your first step towards making, are now quickly becoming a reality. In Silicon Valley, when we go outside, we often see cars that are just driving themselves. So what an incredible time. And we'd love for Code in Place to be the incredible place where you could go start this journey. And I will lightly note that it's not all self-driving cars. I'm always blown away by the creative ways that students apply programming. This is an example of a student who was in old version of CS 106A, and then went on to, instead of making self-driving cars, make an app where you could take a photo of someone's skin and it could help understand, is it skin cancer or not skin cancer? And by saying that, I mean, you come from a million different backgrounds with your own perspectives of what problems are worth solving. So hopefully, once you learn how to program, you can solve problems that I hadn't even thought of when I made these slides. And on the note of it's a very interesting time to learn, you know, I've probably never had more fun programming than this year. You may have heard, but there's been this pretty big breakthrough in the computer science world. Things that are sometimes called large language models. You might know it as ChatGPT or one of the other large language models. And these artificial intelligence systems have really turned out to be rather capable. They're capable at understanding knowledge. But one of the things that they've been shown to be is an incredible assistant for programmers. You know, it is now the point where if you know your fundamentals of programming, these tools can help you take it so far. I have myself, you know, never had more fun programming. Over the last few weeks, I challenged myself to make a program and spent 5 days programming and accomplished something that would have taken me 6 months. I've seen my students, you know, after they've learned their fundamentals with these tools that can help accelerate your ability to program. Once they know their fundamentals, the extents that they're able to go after just a few months of study is astounding. So there's these new tools out there. If you haven't heard of them, certainly worth checking out. Their fundamental knowledge, because they're computer-based tools, is programming. And if you can learn how to speak programming, if you can learn how to understand things like Python, then you will be able to use these tools in a really powerful way. It has probably never been more exciting to learn to program. It has never been a time where beginners could go so far. So I'm really excited. You know, it also has meant that we can improve our pedagogy in lots of interesting ways. So what a time to be alive. What a great moment for making impact. And I'm so glad that you're considering learning to program at this time. So this is the start of your journey. As I said, we've seen so many people learn to code. I do want to mention that it's hard work. Like, you're going to be pushing your mind. And as a learner, you're going to have to be an essential ingredient in this journey. And our job is to open every door possible on your way. It is hard work. I'm not going to pretend it's not, but it's definitely work worth doing. And, you know, it's hard work. That's why we start with this gentle introduction. Decades of Stanford pedagogy improvements to try and make what is a really hard task manageable. And I'm really happy that now, if you can get to that point where you know your fundamentals, you get the gift of being able to go so far. Okay, so at this point, I've told you about the curriculum. I've told you about why I think Code in Place is so special. I've told you about why programming means so much to me. I actually wanted to end with saying, like, how could you get involved? Well, if you go to codeinplace.stanford.edu, there's 2 buttons. One says apply to learn and one says apply to teach. And unsurprisingly, if you want to learn, you hit the learn button. If you want to apply to teach, you hit the teach button. If you click these buttons, it'll bring you to an application. I'd like to explain why we have an application. In that application, first, we're going to make sure you understand what Code in Place is. And then we'd like to get to know you a little bit. Then we give you the first lesson. And then after you've taken that first lesson, we give you 2 small projects to work through. So you'll actually be doing some code. Now, one of the reasons that we have this application is we're going to give you a lot of resources. We're going to give you a teacher. We're going to give you, there's lots of things behind the scenes to run all these services. And we kind of want to make sure that you're ready to learn. So by doing this application, you're just showing us that you have the desire to learn. So go here, show us you have the desire to learn. And then once you're at that point, we will find you a wonderful teacher. Now, of course, some people on this call might be interested in being teachers, in which case, thank you so much for everything you do. There's, obviously you would hit the apply to teach button. And when you hit the apply to teach button, you'll have a similar thing, but you'll also be like uploading teaching demos and solving noticing tasks. So we look forward to that. Okay. In the lesson, you'll go through a lesson that will step-by-step take you through learning to program. And then you'll be solving these two problems. And we really think that if you take your time with the lessons, possibly look at extra examples, you're going to find this challenge not too hard. Since you're at the info session, though, I did want to give you a little pro tip. If you're trying the lessons and it's seeming really difficult, one of the things you can do is there's a link where you can go and ask questions. Feel free to hit that link and ask a question. Another thing you can do is sometimes people find it easier to change their Carol to a turtle. So if you hit the settings here, you can go change your Carol to a turtle. If you're blind, this has been made so that it's easy to understand with the screen reader. But if you can go to the settings, you can also make it so that it's easier to see with a screen reader. So made for everybody, regardless of your background. So anyways, if you want to change your Carol to a turtle, you can do it there. And perhaps that will make things a little bit easier. There's also a button here for documentation, and that will just list out all of the commands in Carol. And it's kind of like a compressed version of what you would get from the lesson. So those are just a couple pro tips, just to repeat them. Do your lesson, and then you'll be ready to take on some of these activities. If you hit settings, you can, if you're blind or you'd rather change your icon of Carol, you can do that there. And if you hit this button, then you can go see some documentation. Okay, and then I hope all of you guys go and do that, even if it's just for the joy of engaging in some problems. Some people ask me this question. This one makes me really happy. It's like, Chris, I went and I did it and I had a lot of fun, and now I've finished the application. On some level, the answer is going to be, we're going to start the class in April and we can't wait to see you. But you might also want to know, what can you do between when you finish your application and April? And a simple answer is, we have a self-guided version of this course where you can see the material. We would love it if you spent some time getting further in, so that when class starts, you already have a strong foundation. That would be doing yourself a favor, and it would make us really happy. So if you finish your application early, you can optionally do as much of the self-guided course as you want. It will only make you a stronger programmer when class starts. I suppose on that note, what are we looking for in our applications? We're looking for people with dedication who really will have the time to learn, because we're giving so many resources. That's the number one thing we're looking for. The other thing is we want to also make sure people don't come in with way too much experience. Every once in a while you'll have some folks, because we give a certificate at the end, you'll have some folks who are actually already amazing programmers. This is probably too much of an intro class for them. So those are the two things we're looking out for. Like, do you have enough time? And actually, are you already looking like a professional programmer? So I wouldn't worry too much about the looking too much. If you're not a professional programmer, you don't have to worry about that second point. If you are a professional programmer, come teach with us. Okay, but that's a way of saying we really want to take everyone who's willing to learn. If you're a beginner of some flavor, we would just love to teach you. Okay. If you finish early, one last thing is there's a button called Share. It will give you a personalized link, and you can share it with your friends and family. We have learned in the past that when somebody takes Code in Place, the more people from their community who learn with them, the better they do. So, if you can convince your grandma or your friend or your child, somebody in your community to learn with you, it's actually doing yourself a favor, as well as sharing this wonderful free resource with more folks. Okay, great. And this is where this is that self-guided course. You can find more things if you finish early here, but really you have one big job: get that application in. Okay, so that was Code in Place. You probably have a million questions. We'll take the next 25 minutes to answer some of them. But Code in Place. We've got the class in the world, perhaps with the most teachers, teaching 10 times as many students, and this content from Stanford's flagship class, all for free to you, which is paid for by a very generous donor. It's one of the joys in our professional lives to get to offer this class. And we can't wait to do Code in Place 5. This is our 5th year. And yeah, thanks for joining with that. At this moment, so as you imagine, Code in Place is made by a whole bunch of wonderful people. Not just Mehran and myself, but there's a whole team of people who built all the tools, who help with all the pedagogy. And at this moment for the Q&A, I'd like to actually invite Juliet Woodrow, who has been involved in Code in Place from the beginning, was one of the head TAs for CS 106A and is now a PhD student who's studying the future of high quality education. And I want to bring Juliet to answer some of your questions. So hi, Juliet.
Hi, Chris. Thanks so much. I feel like I get so excited every time I see the presentation on Code in Place. And it's also so exciting to see everybody in the chat who's so excited to learn and so excited to teach here today. Wonderful. So thanks, everybody.
So
I thought oh yeah, you go ahead.
No, you've had a chance to look at the Q&A. What sort of questions do people have?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people who are really excited, and you gave a little bit of an overview about what a week in Code in Place might look like, but some people are curious about how much time they would spend and maybe in a week, and then kind of where that time would be allocated. We want to start with that.
Okay. What a great question. Yeah, so we expect that you'll be spending about 7 hours a week as a student. And where will that time be allocated? We give you a lot of self-paced material. So we'll give you lessons you can do at your own pace. And we'll give you assignments you can do at your own pace. At any moment in that week, you can go ask questions from our huge community of learners, but you have 6 of your hours will be self-paced. And then 1 of those hours will be meeting in a small group. So you'll have a teacher who will spend an hour with you and 10 other students. You'll work through problems together. And we think that builds a lot of community, but also is really helpful for making sure that everyone stays on track with their learning. Now, as I said, at any point in time, there's 700 learners. So there's kind of no limit to how far you could go if you have more time. If you're finding anything hard, there's kind of no limit to how many questions you could ask and how many answers you could receive. But anyways, so that's the cadence. On Mondays, we'll release a bunch of material. You have the whole week to do it whenever you want, and then you'll have a 1-hour section. And again, when you enroll in the course, then you'll be choosing the section time.
Great. Thanks. I guess going along with that, some people are wondering who is eligible to apply as a student. And also a lot of people are really excited about being teachers. And if you could touch on, I think, students, teachers, and then any kind of training opportunities kind of for either group.
Yeah, okay, fantastic. So who should apply as a student? Basically everybody who is a beginner. And by beginner, I mean when I showed you the list of concepts we're going to go over, that you don't know all those concepts already. So if you looked at that list of concepts, you're like, I don't know how to do variables, I don't know how to do lists or dictionaries, then this could be a great class for you. On the other hand, who could become a good teacher? To be a good teacher, the prerequisite is all the material we're going to be teaching. So you should be able to go through the self-guided course and feel comfortable with all of those concepts. And then if you're at that point, then the next thing is, there's other skills to a teacher, which is like, can you be patient with people? Can you be welcoming? And do you have those other soft skills? And you want to show that through your teaching demo. We really care about the community you'll make in your small group of 10 people. So when you're doing that teaching demo, show us that you're going to make an uplifting community filled with curiosity and great content for your learners. So if you know how to program, you already know all the concepts in Code in Place. Please do try coming back as a teacher. You'll make your teaching demo. It'll go to a big team of past teachers, and they'll look through all the teaching demos. And that's how we hire our teacher cohort. Yeah.
Perfect. Yes, we are always looking for more teachers. I think one of the most special parts of Code in Place.
And actually, I don't know. I just randomly see a question which somebody said, I have 2 years of professional experience. Is that good enough for being a teacher, or is it overqualified? And I'd say there's no such thing as being overqualified. Like, I've been a section leader at some point. We had one of the inventors of Carol, who has been a teacher for 3 decades, come back and be a teacher. You can't be overqualified. If you're an exceptional programmer, or if you've got years of teaching or building, that's just a good thing for your students.
Yes, +1. Another question I've seen a couple times is people are wondering if they need to download anything or have any type of special computer, because maybe they've heard of that in some classes. So if you just wanted to talk about what you need to be in Code in Place.
We built it all so that all you need to do is be able to run the website. And we made it so that when you're programming, what we give you looks just like the downloaded version. So you're learning all the skill sets that are related to the downloaded version. But the short answer is you don't have to download anything. At the end of class, we're going to give you packages of like, here's the things you could do so you could program outside of the Code in Place website. But for this building of your foundation, nope, just come to codeinplace.stanford.edu.
Perfect. Let's see, what are some other good questions in here? We've had some questions. People were really excited when you talked about kind of the interdisciplinary nature of computer science, and lots of people have specific interests like marketing or business and kind of some other ones I've seen. Could you talk about maybe how people could apply this to their different interests?
I mean, yeah, it's such a wonderful question. I get to see this in lots of ways from my vantage point as a professor at Stanford. So when we teach 106A, I think almost the majority of students in the class are from other majors. So maybe they're coming from econ, or maybe they're coming from marketing, maybe they're coming from anthropology. A lot of artists want to learn how to program. And so from this point, I've just seen how programming can mix with all of these different things that people could be interested in. I do remember one student, Juliet, he came to me and he said, like, I really want to be a dentist. That was my life goal. But I'm kind of finding this fun. I'm just going to take the class. And we had a great time. He learned. And then afterwards, he's like got really deep into the world of the intersection of dentistry and computer science for like making the dentist experience smarter and better supported, having at-home care for his patients. And every once in a while, he sends me a message of the life of a dentist cross computer scientist. I just thought that was lovely. You all have your own passions. There's different things that you find fascinating, whether it's art or dentistry or marketing. Just being able to speak English, you can imagine, or just like being able to speak a human language is useful. Being able to speak a programming language is just generally useful. It's a core skill. So come, have fun. I love all these hearts. They make me so happy. It seems like we've had a few thousand people hit a heart button. So fun. This is going to be a great year, Juliet.
I love everybody listening or putting their hearts. Definitely +1 to the interdisciplinary nature. I feel like part of how I got started was I was like, I love teaching and I love computer science. And Chris was like, you can do them together. So very fun. We're getting a couple questions about maybe once people do their application, when should they check back on that, both for section leaders and for students?
So when you finish your application, there'll be a little message. It should say application complete. And then there'll be a little message which says, this is when we plan to let everyone know. So basically, we have to get all the student applications. Then we have to get all the teacher applications. We have to make sure the numbers match up. And so there is one day, then we'll start to tell everybody, welcome to Code in Place. That date should be on your application. Juliet, I would say it out loud, but I'm so nervous I'll say the wrong date. If you, yeah. So let me see.
We'll get the right date soon, and then we can say it.
It's April. Okay. As a student, and a teacher will be a little bit earlier because we have to make our teachers on board first. But the student, you will find out April 16th.
Perfect.
And then after April 16th, then you have a week to get onboarded, and then we start the class the next week on April 21st. Yeah, but we are trying to scale education, so we'd like to take as many as you guys as we have teachers to support.
Perfect. Some people had some questions about the difference between the kind of self-paced course that you mentioned and then the option for the April synchronous course, and then if they could do both or when they should do one over the other.
Okay, so first, yes, you can totally do both, and you can see how the self-pace is working for you. The main difference is that the synchronous course, I guess you get a section leader who you meet with once a week, and you're part of this festival of learning. I must say there's something special about tens of thousands of people coming together to do the same thing at the same time. It just helps people get further. By the numbers, we see a huge difference. The people who do the self-paced course, a very small percentage of them get very far. And the people who do the synchronous course, the Code in Place 5, a huge number of them get very far. So there must be something qualitatively different. I would say if you're up for it, if you want to learn at this moment, come join us for the synchronous course. And then after the 6 weeks, if for some reason you feel like you want more time, the material's not going to go anywhere. We'll keep it up for you, and you can finish it in your own pace if for some reason something came up. But anyway, so just based off numbers, I would say join us for the Code in Place 5, the one with teachers, and then do as much self-paced as you want between now and then.
Perfect. Just so many good questions in here. Seen a few times. I think there's so many people who are excited to be section leaders in this chat, which is awesome. I know lots of this has been geared towards students, but some people are wondering a little bit more specifics about training that section leaders might get, especially if you're a new teacher, and what those opportunities might look like.
Yeah, every teacher has a first teaching experience. I remember my first teaching experience vividly. And it's actually, sometimes those are the best classes you've taught. The first time I taught, I put 10 times more energy in than any other time. It was just meant so much to me to be given that opportunity. First time teachers can be really exceptional. So if you're thinking about teaching for the first time, this could be a great place for it. You'll show in your application that you have the prerequisites for teaching. And then once you get admitted, we have a series of trainings to make sure that you're ready to teach Code in Place. And then, obviously over 5 years, we've built a lot of scaffolding over making sure that people are ready for sections. We actually have some really cool cutting edge tools to help teacher training. We can talk about that more once you get in.
Perfect. So many people are so excited in the
I'll
Q&A.
Just read a
so
quote
fun to see.
From a potential student. Thank you so much to those who are considering becoming section leaders. Your gift of time will give me the opportunity to learn, which is that's kind of what it's all about. Thank you very much for saying that. I see an interesting one, Julia. It says, can students apply to be both a student and a section leader? Normally, most people are in one camp or the other. If you are really pretty strong, you apply to section lead, and otherwise you apply to student. There have, I guess we're looking at so many people. There's some people who really feel that they could somehow go both ways. In that case, we'll probably look at your section leader application first, and we might think not ready to section lead, and then we'll look at the student application second. So there's always about 5 to 10 people who apply to both. Really, I hope that you choose one, but there is a way. If you accidentally applied to both, it won't be a problem. A lot of people will go look at one application and complete the other.
Yes. So true. Some people are wondering about you talked a lot about life after Code in Place, and how I think this can be a place for anybody to start. But I guess somebody was asking what kind of job opportunities might this, start me on the path towards. That was one question I just saw.
Yeah, I think the question of life after Code in Place. So our learning goal here is that you're ready to go and almost teach yourself the rest of computer science. We want to give you the fundamentals so that you can go and pick up and keep learning. So life after Code in Place, if you're a student, will probably be learning at your own pace of things you want to. We would like to leave you with the tool set of how to learn on your own. So maybe you finish Code in Place, but you're I really want to make an interactive website. We want you to be ready to learn how to make that interactive website after Code in Place. Maybe after Code in Place, you just want to go do data science. Well, you've done some of that in Code in Place, and then we'll also give you tools. In terms of jobs, certainly if you've been a section leader, that's a really good place to get a job. I can imagine if you're just beginning, one pipeline could be come do Code in Place, finish it, spend some of the rest of the year learning on your own, and then come back next year and maybe you could be a teacher. We've had a lot of student to teacher transitions, and they've just been exceptional because they know what the experience is to be a student. And so if you were a student and then you worked really hard, sometimes those people make the best teachers. I feel like once you're a section leader, you're a much better place to go applying for a job. And it's nice that you can say that you were a volunteer section leader for this Stanford course. And then
that answered a good amount of questions. We had lots of people who were saying, which were so excited, they were in Code in Place in the past year, and they were wondering if they would make a good section leader. And the answer is definitely that would be awesome.
I saw in here, what's the time commitment for section leaders? It is less. So when you go to apply, it's 7 hours per week. That's for students. For section leaders, if you already know the material, you have to teacher section, that takes an hour. You have to prepare for it, which takes at least an hour. And then with extra training, you can imagine it's about 2 to 3 hours. Actually, I'll just plug Juliet for a moment here. Juliet has invented one of the coolest tools for education I've ever seen, where if a teacher has extra time, they can press a button. And then if a student's learning, they'll get a little pop-up and be like, hey, we see that you're learning. Would you like a teacher to come talk to you now? And then they can say no if they're like, no, I'm busy. Or they can say yes, and then a teacher just pops into their learning experience and be like, hey, how can I help you? So that's the minimum for teachers, but thanks to cool tools like the one I just described for Juliet, if you're loving teaching and you're falling in love with sharing knowledge with others, there's really no limit to how much you can put in to help these students learn. Also, thanks for that, Juliet. What a cool thing you and your team made. Yay. Okay. Oh, here's an interesting one. Somebody says they're a JavaScript developer. Can they apply to section lead? You kind of want to make sure that the concepts we talk about in Python make sense to you. So why don't you go through the curriculum and see if all of it's kind of making sense. The transition from one programming language to another is actually often pretty light. So see if you can make that transition. And I think that'll come to light during the interview process. Okay. How can we combine any reading materials during the week? Oh, this is such an interesting question. Because Julia and I and lots of other folks have talked a lot about this. There's lots of ways that we have for you to learn outside of your sections. We have readings. We've basically written 2 textbooks. We have videos that we try and make as exciting as possible. And we have a ton of worked examples. And worked examples are like other programs of the same level of complexity. So Steve asked, are there reading materials during the week? And the answer is yes, though many people are very happy to learn just based off of the lessons with the videos and the worked examples. So, but other people really love readings. I would say, actually, Juliet, there's one of the prerequisites is that you speak English a little bit, enough to hold a conversation in your section. But there's a lot of people who are in Code in Place where English might be their second language. There's some process of learning. And I feel like if that speaks to you, I think the reading materials can be particularly useful just to have things all written. It can go through Google Translate, be in your own native language. Yeah, so yes, that was the longest yes I've ever said. There are reading materials.
Perfect. And then another good question is, you went through the weeks of Code in Place, but just like the broader timeline again for people in terms of like how much to expect.
Yeah. Okay. So, 6 weeks long, starts April 21st. And each week you'll be spending about 7 hours. And then when that finishes, then there's your final project time. After that, though, the community doesn't go away. Like, we will keep Code in Place 5 open as long as students keep coming back to it. Actually, Julia, do you know this? Like, if I go to Code in Place 4, which is almost a year ago now, there's still like 30 people from Code in Place 4 online at any point in time, still learning, still sharing ideas, answering each other's questions. So I'd say there's a 6-week intensive period where you're doing 7 hours a day, and then a community that lasts forever. And possibly, if you finish all the material in that 6 weeks, you'll get your certificate then. If you finish most of it, but you get, something comes up in life and you need more time, then when you finish your material, that's when you'll get your certificate. The one thing that's really important, though, is that you can participate in your section. We really want people who think they can come to the majority of their sections. If you can't make 1 or 2, there's an easy way to do a makeup. But all these teachers are volunteering their time, so our job is to make sure they've got students to teach.
Yes, totally. And somebody else was asking about like class time. And so just section is the only time that's synchronous, or you really need to be synchronous. And then there's videos and other lessons that will happen. So there's no class time besides your specific section every week.
Exactly. And that's to make it work around the world for different time zones. I will lightly note that last year I started doing a 1 hour a week. It would be a little bit like this, Juliet, but we'd be going a little bit more into the material of the week. And so there is a place if you want it, but it's just totally optional. And the point being, we have everything from Japan, that time zone, through to California, and everything in between. So we understand that synchronous time could prevent some people from being able to learn. So we want to make sure that when you get synchronous time, it's the best. It's a small group just for you. Someone saw something. I want to remind people that there's always a self-guided course, so people can always just go see the material. Once you finish your application, there will be a little link that says, go check out this self-guided course, and you'll be able to see everything. So the answer is, yeah, once you've applied, everyone can see all the material, both section leaders and students. Hey, this is great. Juliet, we're gonna have to go pretty soon. I bet hopefully we answered a bunch of questions here that people were curious about. Hopefully it got you all excited, because we would love to teach you. Maybe as a parting note, please do come join. It's the joy of our lives to teach you. And it's an incredible thing that Stanford lets us give away for free. I really expected they would say no, Juliet, when we first asked, but they were kind. I feel like somewhere at Stanford, they're like, we should be trying to find ways to contribute more beyond the walls of our university. They let us do this. A kind donor funds it so that you don't have to pay, the hundreds of US dollars it would otherwise cost. And how lucky are we to get to offer that? And so please join us. Please tell your friends what Stanford's doing for free, what this kind donor is funding, so that more people can get involved in the goodness. Okay.
Yes, so exciting. Apply to learn, apply to teach. Next steps.
Yes, so on the platform, you will find the links. So everything what we talked about, kind of the section leader and kind of the student applications, just go ahead and you can apply anytime. We share the deadlines kind of with you directly. And hopefully this session was helpful to all of you. I feel like we got most of the questions covered, but if we didn't get to yours, we apologize. We still hope we got to most. I think with that, we can close this out. We hope to see many, many of you kind of with us in Code in Place. It's really a wonderful project. And Chris and Julie, they are so passionate about it. So please join us in this kind of exciting opportunity. So thank you so much, everyone. And with that, have a great evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you are joining us from.
Yeah, go codeinplace.stanford.edu to get started. Okay, thanks everyone for coming.
Thank
you. Talk to you later.